All right, so welcome back to Speak. This podcast aims to address the needs of our community by breaking down social barriers through education, activism, and advocacy. My name is Phoenix, and I hope that this conversation resonates with you and inspires you to continue to, bring these discussions in this space and beyond. So as you probably know, change is an act, and it's a resource and a guide to bettering not only our own lives, but those of our community as well. And today's topic is women empowerment, where we will discuss how the language used around young girls versus young boys is different and detrimental to their inner voice. From childhood, there's an evident distinction made between these roles and behaviors and the appearance of a girl compared to a boy. Whether it's the fact that boys are praised for aggression while girls are expected to be polite, or that girls are more often complimented for their appearance, while boys may be complimented on things like their work ethic. And a girl stepping outside of these strict societal boundaries, makes her less feminine or less girly. And these societal expectations continue from childhood into adulthood. And we see the effect of these boundaries manifest into adulthood, where women are paid less for the same work a man does. And it's very frustrating to hear that as a society, we haven't progressed enough for women to have the same opportunities. So today we want to dive deeper into the root of this issue and basically find out how we can work towards change. But first, we would like to introduce our special guests. So we've got Miriam and Adam, who are joining us as representatives from Plan Canada from their youth council. I want to say thank you guys so much for coming down to speak with us on this great Zoom call. I'm going to pass it on to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I can start, Miriam, that's fine. My name is Adham. I'm an undergraduate student. I currently reside in Kingston, Ontario. And I'm one of the youth council members at Plan Canada, where we kind of just work at working and planning and advising for the organization, and we get to do a lot of cool advocacy work, including joining you today. So yeah.
Great.
All right, so my name is Miriam. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a grade 10 student in the city of Ottawa. And like Adham, I'm a proud member of the Youth Council at Plan International Canada, where we aim to bring awareness around issues regarding rights of children, equity for girls, and other global issues facing young people like myself.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. And again, glad to have you guys on the podcast. All right, so we'll get right into it. There's a lot we got to go over today. So we'll start with the topic of the creation of, what is this inner voice, right? So as I kind of mentioned, there's a common misconception made about children where, are they too young to understand? Children's minds are similar to sponges. They pick up a lot of information and a lot more than one would expect. And a sister notices, when her brother isn't even asked to do chores in the kitchen, or when she's told to play with her dolls instead of playing outside with her brothers, that sort of stuff. And what we hear around us is internalized, and it becomes our inner voice. And how we're treated and expected to act influences the way we speak to ourselves. So let's explore this and why it significantly impacts girls. First question here, from a young age, how are young, impressionable girls made to feel they are below the boys around them?
That's a good question. I think, the way I think of it is I kind of come from a big STEM background, and I kind of look at it, and we kind of learn a lot about public health and epigenetics and social determinants of health, and it kind of boils down to how do our external environment kind of influence our internal health, whether that's mental health, physical health. We focus a lot on the physical health, but there's definitely a big health component which can even impact one's genome, but it can even boil down to the things that you hear, especially when you think of, being a child. That's the biggest developmental stage in a person's life. It's essentially what happens in those crucial years kind of sticks on in terms of how you behave, how you think, and how that influences you. So I think when there are environmental stressors, that definitely inflicts into your internal health and how you personally feel and what you personally think of certain ideas. It's like the same thing of being told something repetitively, you start to almost think the same thing. And I think when we kind of relate it back to the situation that we're talking about, a lot of girls, even whether it's in the classroom or through at home or through what they're told, they're defined by these specific exclusion criteria that differentiates them between boys. They're set in terms of these boundaries that they must reside in. And if they step out of that, it's noted and it's told them that it's wrong. And I think overstage during those crucial years, it starts to essentially what you said is it impacts your inner voice. It starts to impact how you are. So I think it's the way everything's currently set up, these big stages, which are really focused on school and then home, that's really the two things they do. I think they're built on making these environmental stressors define girls in a certain way. And I think that's kind of why that causes kind of that inner voice to build up, which can stay for, the rest of their life, really.
Yeah, exactly. And you've brought up a lot of great points there, and it can have these long-lasting impacts. So, small little words, small little things can have these great impacts. It's really interesting to really think about it, right? And, when it comes to these like small words and this language and behavior directed to girls, what are some like examples of this, that we might see or hear?
I can give an example. So kind of ironically, I grew up with a twin brother, so I can see these like firsthand.
Oh yeah.
So we're both competitive swimmers, and I went to visit him at nationals where he competed this summer, and someone in the community was like describing how amazing he was as a swimmer, and then how I was a great assistant, and they knew I was also a swimmer. So like that kind of just stuck with me, and like words like that can just change the way you see yourself.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they might not think it means anything to say these little comments, but the amount of impact it has on you receiving it, and sometimes for the rest of your life and how you see yourself, it's crazy. And these are the sort of things that we need to bring more awareness about, right? So yeah, thank you guys for that. Now we'll move on to our next subject of the media, which is huge when it comes to this issue here, because the portrayal of a girly girl in entertainment, it always follows the same cookie cutter outline, right? Like she's conventionally attractive, likes to adorn herself, she's obsessed with some boy, right? How many movies have we seen this year alone with a girl obsessed with some guy, right? And in the real world, as well as in the media, women are expected and shown to be the caretaker, the cook, the cleaner. Why can't girls be depicted as having, career ambitions or interests that are tied to men or the typical female role, right? So my first question is, what harmful portrayals in the media are reversing the progress for gender equality?
That's a good question. I can start with that one, Miriam. I think, like, when you look back at any form of media, if it's a book, if it's a movie, if it's a TV show, really anything, I think when you look at someone making a storyline, it always follows typically the same plot, which is that there's this boy who's typically the main character, and then there's some girl who serves as the side character, some admiration, something like that. And I think me and my friends talk about this a lot, is it gives exactly the wrong impression, because it tells you that the boy is the main character and everything around him, the girl and all, are all essentially dependent on the main character. And that's kind of how the story works, which is not the case in real life, because all of us, girls or boys, we all serve a main character in our own life. And when you watch all these forms of entertainment that essentially tell you as a girl, you are dependent, he's the main figure, and then you're kind of the side quest. And I think that's problematic. I think it doesn't let people acknowledge that they are an independent person character, but rather they have to depend or rely on this main character. And I think with that impression, I think comes in a lot of the, I guess, traditional values that were expected, where it's the boy is seen as this person who's supposed to get that, the ambition, the career, while the woman or the girl does essentially the side stuff. And I think the media does that, and it kind of, like, to answer your question, I think it inhibits progress in gender equality, specifically kind of through that lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And it's important to recognize that. And, after hopefully talking about this, more people will look at movies a bit differently and notice these little things that kind of, create different depictions of females, and as well as, it does have its impacts. The media is very powerful. And so one thing that may be greatly impacted here is a girl's education. So when it comes to this perfect girl that's portrayed in movies, or the way that they're treated in movies, as you mentioned, how would a girl's education be impacted by a society's definition of the perfect girl here?
Yeah, so I guess the society's definition of the perfect girl can vary a lot. And from, being a high school student, getting to be the perfect girl is like very difficult, because, you don't wear enough makeup and now you're not trying hard enough, but then you wear too much and you're seeking attention. And then you wear too much clothes and you're insecure, and then you show too much skin and now you're just seeking validation. And if you don't have good grades, you're unintelligent. But if your grades are too high, you're like only seen as a tryhard. And, these examples are about like appearance and life at school, but kind of to relate back to the question of how being the perfect girl can impact their study path, girls will often take into account that they're expected to get married and expected to have children, care for them, and have a career while maintaining a home all at the same time. And so recently I read a book called Moment of Lift by Melinda Gates. It's a very good book. And she ran a study, and it concluded that women do about 7 years of unpaid labor in their life. Yeah. And that could be like a girl's master's and PhD degree. So I guess this society's definition of the perfect girl impacts the way that they can kind of see themselves and how they choose to do their career path. And I guess kind of an easy fix is just understanding that there's no such thing as a perfect girl. And that every girl is perfect.
Yeah, there is no such thing as it. And, you can never really win. As you said, you're back in high school, you're trying to think, okay, do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? Like either way, there's going to be something picking at you from society's norms. And then the impact that does have on, our education when it comes to getting your master's or whatever it is, post-secondary, these are all the powerful things that these little things, can have when it comes to impacts, right? So it's great to think about. When it comes now to institutional responses, we see that this singular definition of a girl is universal. As you said, there is no perfect girl. And so are there ways that we can change is the big question. What ways are women and girls seen to have, these decreased opportunities in the world?
Yeah, I think, I think there's a lot of, I think people, from like an institutional perspective, I think people have, set these really old traditions that they want to abide by. And for that, they make it so that it's extremely difficult for girls or women to excel in something that goes against the status quo. So, for example, I can speak to a personal experience just on campus. There's very, very little women or in engineering. And that I think even when someone notices that, that's like, whoa, she's in engineering. And it's like, even though that's not normal, and it becomes harder for them because it's very, I guess, male-centered space. There isn't space for a lot of women to gather in the engineering space, and it's just hard to constantly be around that 24/7 where you don't feel like there's similar people with you. And I think that's definitely a problem. I think that's because, beforehand it was never seen that women could be engineers, and for that they make it so difficult, and they essentially put barriers around it as their subconscious way of saying anyone can be what they want, but they make it so difficult to almost prevent that from happening. Sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I can relate to that because when I was trying to go into engineering, I definitely faced a lot of these issues. And, it prevents a lot of girls from even going into it. And I remember Western in particular, their engineering faculty, when it comes to women, it's almost around 30 to 20%. So this is real stuff here. And, one question when it comes to actually dismantling this is how can we even work towards gaining the gender equality we're trying to see in these different areas?
Yeah, so gender equality is a very multi-layered topic, and it can be broken down into many different issues. But I guess it kind of just starts with individuals like you and I, and you have to be able to identify gender biases around you and reflect on how it affects you and other people. And then from there, you can educate yourself so that you can better educate other people in your community, and never stop being an advocate for what you believe in, and embrace differences of others. Yeah, and I think most importantly is no matter what environment you're in, is to create a culture that empowers girls. Well, honestly, it empowers everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And, we want to see that environment everywhere we go when it comes to the work environment and, most especially our campus, right? And university and UTM. So when it comes to this, one big question for our viewers, mainly UTM students, what can they do to work towards, more gender equality?
Yeah. I mean, I echo all of Mir's ideas and thoughts regarding that. I think one thing I would add would probably be just simply critical reflection. I think reflecting on what you're doing. Are you doing enough? Are you doing anything against it? Are you being neutral? Are you actually supporting the gender indifferences? And if so, how? And how can you stop that? Or how can you get to the other side? I think it's really big. How you choose to do critical reflections up to you, whether it's journaling, whether it's just talking with other people or talking to people with different views or mindsets. But I think the concept of critical reflection, seeing where you stand and getting other people to engage in that too, I think is really important.
Yeah, for sure. And, that's really important, especially to hear for students. So thank you for that. And, that sums up all of the questions I've had for you guys and everything I wanted to talk about. I think this was a really great discussion, and it really emphasized the fact that having simple conversations, right, even short ones with people around you, can kind of shift your mindset. And we're happy to have this opportunity with you to produce Speak as an outlet for this, for our UTM students. And I honestly want to say a really big thank you again to you guys, Adnam and Miriam, for coming down from Plan Canada and generously giving us your time, your knowledge, and expertise. And you guys are young as well, so it's great to see young people, sharing such knowledge. Right, it's amazing, and we've learned a lot, and we hope to use what we've learned today to continue to, work towards change in our communities and hopefully our campus community. And now to close off, I want to say to our viewers, thank you for listening to Speak. You can visit www.championsofchange.com to follow our social media pages and to keep up to date with our upcoming initiatives and learn how you can be part of the change that your community needs to see. And until next time, remember to use your voice.